Usually when we think about a classic 3-minute pop song, we treat it like, well, like a photograph.
Right, just a perfect little snapshot.
Exactly. It's this perfect fleeting snapshot of a single emotion. A catchy chorus hits, the shutter clicks, and we just sort of accept that frozen moment of joy or heartbreak as the whole story.
We rarely stop to ask, what happened the day before that picture was taken, or the inevitable complications that arise 10 years after that perfect chorus fades out. The pop format is designed to be immediate, not comprehensive.
Right. But what if you took that single snapshot and, I don't know, developed it into an entire feature-length film?
That is exactly what we are looking at today.
Yeah, today's deep dive is about a project that attempts exactly that. We are looking at this fascinating source document titled Still My Girl. And it takes one of the most iconic pop snapshots in history, the 1965 hit My Girl by the Temptations, and completely blows the doors off it.
It really does. It stretches that initial spark of sunshine on a cloudy day into a full 12-track soul odyssey.
And doing this requires working on 2 parallel tracks simultaneously, which is honestly incredibly ambitious. On one hand, you have a meticulously detailed narrative arc charting a relationship from its very first glance, all the way to the profound vulnerabilities of old age.
But then on the other hand, the document serves as a highly specific DIY masterclass for home recording artists.
Which is wild.
It provides the exact software blueprints for how to recreate that 1960s Motown sonic aesthetic in a modern bedroom studio using a free program like Audacity.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I am just marveling at the sheer ambition here. You're taking a 3-minute masterpiece, and you're trying to build a whole cinematic universe of harmonies and heartbreak around it.
A whole universe, exactly.
And for you listening, whether you're a DIY home studio beginner who just wants to know the exact equalization tricks to get that vintage vocal sound, or you're a music lover obsessed with how lyrics evolve alongside a real lived-in relationship, there's an absolute blueprint here for you.
Because what's fascinating here is the intersection of emotional storytelling and strict technical discipline. That's where this project really shines.
Right. They have to work together.
A successful concept album can't just rely on good lyrics. Its audio engineering actually has to mirror its psychological depth. The physical sound waves themselves have to tell the story of a specific era and a specific feeling.
So before we can look at the emotional story of the narrator, who we'll just call the singer for now, I really want to understand the sonic world this story is living in.
Let's do it.
We have to move from the conceptual ambition to the literal software settings. The source material describes the target aesthetic as a finely tailored suit.
And a finely tailored suit implies a lot of intention. You want crisp lapels, which musically translates to a tight, disciplined rhythm section.
Okay.
You want warm fabric, which we get from tube saturation. And you want a gentle sheen provided by plate reverb. Nothing is oversized and nothing is sloppy.
Okay, I have to admit some genuine confusion here. Whenever I open audio software, my immediate instinct is just to turn everything up so it sounds massive.
Oh, the classic beginner mistake.
Right. When I look at modern digital mixing, it feels like an overpacked suitcase.
Yeah.
We live in this loudness war era where every single instrument is screaming for attention and the producer's just shoving more and more layers into the mix.
Which is exhausting to the ear.
So how does making elements smaller or actually removing frequencies make the song sound bigger?
Well, modern digital audio has essentially infinite headroom and infinite tracks, so the temptation is always to fill every possible frequency. But the core DNA of the Motown sound is disciplined restraint.
Restraint, okay.
It's about carving out space so the important elements can actually be perceived by the human ear. If everyone is shouting, you can't hear the nuances of the conversation.
That makes total sense.
Let's look at the specific Audacity master bus chain the sources provide to achieve this vintage cohesion. Step 1 is a high-pass filter.
Yeah, I noticed the source specifically insists on setting this filter at 40 Hz, essentially rolling off the frequencies below that.
Exactly.
But as a beginner, I'd assume you want more bass for a rich soul track, not less.
Yeah.
Why are we chopping off the very bottom of the song?
Because below 40 Hz, you mostly have subsonic rumble. This is physical energy that your speakers try to reproduce. Literally, the speaker cone is flapping back and forth trying to push that low air.
Wow. Okay.
But it doesn't actually contribute to the musicality of the bass notes. It just eats up all your sonic headroom.
Oh, I see.
The source is a great way of putting it. It says you have to clean the basement so the living room can breathe.
Clean the basement so the living room can breathe. I love that.
Right. Removing that invisible sub-rumble is, ironically, what allows the vintage warmth of a classic James Jamerson-style bass line to actually punch through and be heard clearly.
Okay, so once the rumble is gone, the sources outline a master EQ strategy to ensure all the tracks maintain a cohesive vintage texture.
Ah,
They call it the smile curve.
the famous smile curve.
And if you listening have ever played with the EQ sliders on your car stereo, or maybe in Spotify, you probably accidentally made this exact shape.
It's the classic tone shape. You boost 80 hertz slightly to give the bass some warmth. But then, crucially, you cut 200 hertz by a few decibels.
Why 200 hertz?
Because the 200 hertz range is where muddiness or boxiness lives. If you have a lot of instruments competing there, it sounds like your song is playing from inside a cardboard box.
Ugh. Yeah, I know that sound.
Once you carve that out, you start adding the shine back in. A gentle boost around 1.5 kilohertz for vocal clarity, another at 4 kilohertz for presence, and a tiny lift at 8 kilohertz for air.
So visually, on a graphic equalizer, it literally looks like a gentle smile.
Exactly.
And then we get to the glue that holds all this together, which is compression. I know for a fact that for a beginner using Audacity, compression can be terrifying.
Oh, it's the hardest tool to master.
It's so easy to accidentally squash a mix until it sounds totally lifeless. But the source gives a very specific mathematical recipe for 1960s cohesion.
It does.
It calls for a threshold of negative 18 decibels, a gentle ratio of 3:1, and then it specifies an attack time of 20 milliseconds and a release of 120 milliseconds. Why those specific numbers?
Well, the attack time is critical. At 20 milliseconds, the compressor waits just a tiny fraction of a second before it clamps down on the volume.
So it lets a little bit of sound through first.
Right. That tiny window lets the initial physical smack of the snare drum or the pluck of a bass string sneak through untouched. It preserves the human punch, the vitality of the performance, while still controlling the overall tail of the sound.
Okay, and the release.
The 120 millisecond release ensures the compressor lets go quickly enough that the song breathes with the tempo.
The source uses an incredible metaphor for this. It says, Motown compression is a handshake, not a bear hug.
A perfect way to describe it. By bringing the quietest parts up and the loudest parts down just enough, it creates this acoustic illusion that the band is standing in a circle in the exact same room looking at each other, rather than being recorded months apart on separate computers.
Which brings us to the physical space they are playing in, the reverb.
Yes, the reverb.
When I think of reverb, I usually think of a massive cathedral echo. But the blueprint here calls for a plate reverb set to 1.6 seconds and only 18% wet.
To understand why, you have to look at how classic Detroit studios actually created reverb. They didn't have digital plugins. They used an EMT plate reverb, which was literally a massive suspended sheet of metal.
Wait, a giant sheet of metal?
Literally. A transducer would send the sound wave into the metal, making it vibrate, and pickups would capture that metallic vibration.
That is so cool.
The key principle here is subtle shimmer. You don't want the band sounding like they're lost in a canyon. Motown drums should feel like they are bouncing off a wooden floor.
And if you really want to lean into the authenticity, the sources suggest one final, somewhat counterintuitive trick, adding a low-pass filter at 12,000 hertz to cut the high end off completely.
Think of it as gently aging a photograph. Modern digital audio is incredibly pristine, all the way up to 20,000 hertz.
Right.
But to our ears, that much high-frequency information can sound harsh, brittle, or distinctly digital. Vintage analog gear, like tape machines and old mixing consoles, naturally couldn't reproduce those super high frequencies.
So we're just rolling them off on purpose.
Exactly. By intentionally stripping away that modern digital brightness, you wrap the whole mix in velvet rather than gravel.
Okay, so we have our vintage suit tailored. We understand the physical mechanisms shaping the sound. But how do we dress the actual story in it?
Right. Let's get into the album sequence.
The album sequence is structured to perfectly mirror the emotional arc of a growing relationship, and the psychological starting point here is fascinating. The singer describes himself as aimless.
He's just drifting. The narrative relies heavily on weather as a motif. It's not just a backdrop. The weather is a psychological reflection of the relationship's evolution.
In the opening track, When You Walked Into My Weather, what I find so striking is that the love interest doesn't arrive with a thunderclap or some cinematic explosion.
No, it's very subtle.
The song is a steady mid-tempo groove at 102 beats per minute. She arrives as a quiet shift in the climate. The lyrics say, I was drifting day to day, Then your laughter touched my ear, and the world became more clear. She becomes, in his mind, the light.
And you really hear the evolution of this joy as the album progresses into the honeymoon phase. The songwriting changes to reflect the physical spaces they occupy.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, the second track, Sweet Like Sunday Morning, drops the tempo down to a relaxed 82 beats per minute. The joy here is entirely private. It's cozy.
The lyrics talk about coffee brewing, barefoot dancing, and how the kitchen floor becomes a stage. It feels so safe.
It really does.
But then as they step out of the house, the energy completely shifts. The tempo physically speeds up to a walking pace, 112 beats per minute, a brass section kicks in, hand claps join the rhythm, and you're suddenly dancing on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
We've moved from the private safety of the kitchen to public electricity.
The whole world is celebrating with them. It's the absolute pinnacle of early romance. But this high energy makes the inevitable turning point hit that much harder.
Oh man, yeah. That turning point is track 4, A Ring in My Pocket. This is where the first real psychological vulnerability creeps in.
The tone shifts completely.
The tempo settles back down to 88 beats per minute. We get these sweeping emotional orchestral strings, and the lyrics take a sharp turn. He has an engagement ring, but he describes it as being heavy like a sailor's boat.
Such a great line.
He says his hands are shaking, wondering if this is it. It's anticipation mixed with deep, paralyzing fear. And I have to ask you about the production choice here.
Go ahead.
Does wrapping this deep internal panic in a smooth, lush Motown ballad risk masking the emotional weight of the moment for the listener? I mean, the guy is terrified of commitment, but the strings are so relentlessly pretty, it feels almost contradictory.
It might seem that way at first, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, the genius of the classic soul aesthetic is exactly that contrast. The warm strings and the steady walking bass lines aren't masking the panic, they are providing a safe sonic container for it. The smooth instrumentation represents the underlying strength of the love itself, which allows the narrator to safely explore his terrifying leap into commitment.
Oh, wow.
It's like a safety net of harmonies catching him as he jumps. If the music was as jagged as his anxiety, the song would lose its romantic core.
The music is the reassurance he needs to finally knock on her door. That is beautiful. But taking that leap of faith foreshadows a harsh reality, because love isn't just a feeling you have on a sunny sidewalk, it's a daily grinding practice.
Yes, the honeymoon phase ends.
Eventually, you have to move out of that phase and into the inevitable friction of a shared life.
And the arrival of this conflict is stark. The sunny weather metaphors from the opening tracks turn incredibly dark in track 5, called Storm Clouds on the Line.
The psychological shift here gave me whiplash in the best way. The tempo drops to a sluggish 76 beats per minute, and it shifts into a minor key progression with an electric piano that just feels moody and distant.
It's a dramatic change.
The lyrics reveal the real sting of emotional distance. Used to talk till morning light, now we barely say goodnight.
What's happening here is the realization that the initial spark isn't enough to sustain a life. Life introduces pressure, and the companion short story in the source material weaves a parallel narrative that grounds these lyrics in absolute reality.
The short story is brilliant because it's so mundane. If you've ever had an argument in a small apartment, you know exactly what this feels like.
Oh, absolutely.
The narrator talks about how their first real fundamental argument happened over something completely trivial. Dishes left in the sink. Unpaid bills on the kitchen table.
Just daily life stuff.
Exactly. He says they said things they didn't mean and went to sleep facing opposite walls. And there's this devastating line where he realizes the silent house felt louder than thunder.
It perfectly captures how the absence of connection is deafening. But this crisis forces a turning point of renewal in tracks 6 and 7.
Right. Don't let the music stop, and the day you came back.
This is where the narrator's perspective on love profoundly deepens.
He realizes his own faults. And Don't Let the Music Stop, which brings the tempo back up with gospel-inspired backing vocals, he sings, "Every word I failed to hear turned your sunshine into tears." It's profound accountability.
And look at the psychological evolution of the woman's archetype in his mind during this middle act.
Okay.
In the beginning, she was the light of his early courtship. But after surviving this conflict and choosing to stay, she transforms into the compass. She is his direction during uncertainty.
Oh, I love that transition.
Love is revealed not as some magical weather event that happens to you, but as a conscious daily choice you make to rebuild trust.
He literally sings, "Let me fix the things I broke." It's the hardware store metaphor from the short story coming to life. They're sitting on the living room floor surrounded by pieces, deciding together to put it all back together.
And having survived that storm and chosen each other again, the narrative shifts gears entirely. We transition from dramatic romantic conflict into the profound, quiet beauty of long-term life commitment and the ultimate reality of aging.
The songwriting beautifully sheds its grand romantic gestures. The songs focus on deeply rooted domestic truths. Tracks 8 through 10, with titles like Little House on Maple Street and Gray Hair, Same Love, Show Love Becoming a Routine.
Beautiful routine.
Yes. Gray Hair, Same Love is so poignant. The tempo is a slow, patient 72 beats per minute. The lyrics say, time may change the face, but not the warm embrace. And what's beautiful is that by track 10, The World We Built Together, their love isn't just about the two of them anymore. It has rippled out to shape an entire community.
Right. The lyrics describe neighbors gathering, voices rising, and how all the love we gave away came back to us every day.
It's the transition from a private romance to a public legacy. But legacy inherently implies an ending, which brings the narrator to the ultimate vulnerability.
We have to talk about track 11.
We do. Track 11, Hold My Hand Tonight, really got to me. It slows all the way down to 64 beats per minute. The setting is hospital lights glowing dim. The narrator is facing the mortality of his partner.
It's a tough moment.
The lyrics are a desperate plea. Take my hand and stay with me. That's the only thing I need.
The short story adaptation handles this moment with incredible grace.
It really does. The narrator asks his dying wife if she's scared. And she looks at him from the hospital bed and says, no, we've already lived the song, and it was beautiful.
It's a breathtaking realization of a life fully lived.
And as I was reading that, I had this massive light bulb moment. I was thinking about this emotional journey of aging, and I couldn't help but connect it back to the DIY recording techniques we discussed in segment 1.
Wait, really? How do the technical settings connect to the hospital scene?
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. Think about the audacity effects. The soft clipping, the tape saturation, rolling off the harsh digital highs with that 12,000 hertz filter. They aren't just studio tricks. They are the perfect audio metaphors for a lifelong marriage.
Okay, walk me through that.
So when a relationship starts out, it's like pristine digital audio. It's loud. It has all these high frequencies of passion and anxiety. It's incredibly sharp and reactive.
Right.
But as a marriage ages, it undergoes soft clipping. The sharp, hurtful edges of your personality get rounded off by patience. You apply tape saturation, which physically adds harmonic distortion to make things sound warm and thick.
Oh, wow.
A marriage gains that exact same warmth and harmonic richness through years of shared history. You literally roll off the harsh, argumentative highs to preserve the beauty of the core relationship underneath. A 50-year marriage is the Motown EQ curve.
That is honestly an incredible connection. The technical restraint of the audio engineering mirrors the patience and grace required to sustain a lifelong love.
Yes.
You're using the high-pass filter to remove the unnecessary rumble, the trivial arguments about dishes, the ego, so the essential warmth of the bass line can be heard.
Yes, exactly. You clean the basement so the living room can breathe,
Right.
which perfectly sets up the finale. The 12th track, Still My Girl.
It's a return to the spirit of the original Temptations inspiration. The tempo bumps back up to a comfortable 80 beats per minute. The gospel choir harmonies return. It proves that love endures beyond time.
The narrator says, if the world should fade to black, I'd still find my way back.
The psychological evolution is complete. She has transitioned from the light to the compass, and now, ultimately, she has become his home.
Still my home every night. So what does this all mean for us? Let's bring it all together. The journey of this deep dive has been incredible.
It really has.
We've seen how the disciplined, restrained technical settings of a 1960s Motown studio, understanding why we cut 40 hertz to save our speakers, using the 3-to-1 compression handshake to glue a band together, and embracing the subtle shimmer of a metal plate reverb.
Right.
It all perfectly serves as the vessel for a story. A story that grows from a sunny day on a sidewalk to a lifetime measured in heartbeats.
It proves that the medium truly is the message. You cannot authentically tell a story about enduring, patient love using harsh, modern, overcompressed audio where every instrument is fighting for attention.
You just can't.
The analog warmth, the space you carve out for the other elements to shine, is the actual empathy of the narrative.
I am genuinely never going to listen to a 3-minute pop song the same way again. Whenever that perfect, catchy chorus hits, I'm always going to wonder what happens in Chapter 8 when the bills pile up, or Chapter 11 in the hospital room.
And that leads me to something for you, listening, to ponder on your own. Think about your absolute favorite 3-minute pop song,
Oh, that's a good exercise.
the one you know all the words to. If you had to stretch its underlying emotion into a 12-chapter chronological life story, what hidden conflicts, what quiet domestic triumphs, and what profound life lessons would you discover that the original artist had to leave out of the frame?
I love that. It goes right back to what we said at the very beginning. A pop song is just a snapshot. But life is the whole movie. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring the music, keep listening to the real stories happening around you, and we'll catch you next time.